Good morning, everybody. On this 10th day of April in the year of our Lord 2025, I hope that you're doing well. We who are Christians are in the midst of the holy season. This coming Sunday is Palm Sunday, so hope that everybody is, you know, preparing themselves to celebrate and to meditate on what Jesus, coming here and doing what he did means for all of us. I was sharing with somebody, I don't remember who, that uh, I believe in Jesus, which is why the Christian nationalists get on my nerves so much because they talk about Christianity, but they kind of just ignore Jesus and what Jesus said, but they use his name. But I say out loud that Jesus, whether you believe Jesus was the Messiah or not, Jesus was a prophet who had teachings that have never been able to be erased. The things that he told us to do, to build community, to depend on God, the parent. Uh, Jesus said all of that and so much more. And they've never been able to obliterate him. He fought against the empire. That's why they killed him. He was brave. He called out injustice when he saw it, injustice against the poor. And he went to the people who needed him most. He didn't stick with the muckety mucks and the elite. He just went into the streets and he went into people's homes and he went to where people were hurting and in need. He didn't want anybody to be hungry. He didn't like what the government was doing. He didn't like what the church folks were doing, because church folks can be kind of treacherous sometimes. But he didn't like any of that. And so he gained enemies on earth while he was alive. And he was punished for it. He was punished for it. Never, though, did he let that risk and that possibility stop what he was doing. And I compare him in my own mind to other prophets. I think Dietrich Bonhoeffer was a prophet in terms of what he did, and I think Dr. Martin Luther King was a prophet. And there are more. There are more people who have had the faith and the confidence and maybe the urge to talk about the things in the Bible that we don't want to talk about. We don't want to consider them, and to help us to wrestle with our questions and our doubts. Because I think that if you are a believing person, there are going to be times when you have doubts. You just don't know where God is. And so people who are prophets kind of they can just say out loud what people don't want to say out loud. You can't go into your church, into most churches, and say, I don't know if I believe in God, or I don't know if I believe in God the same way I used to. And I'm mentioning this because in troubling times like these, those are some of the questions that people wrestle with. Where is God? Why is God allowing the situation in Gaza to go on? Why did God allow the enslavement of Black people? Why did God allow rampant mob violence by people who didn't like Black people? Why did God allow any of that? World War One, World War Two, and the situation that's happening in Gaza is it's just hard to swallow that they're still talking about getting rid of the Gazans, putting them off of their land. That would be like somebody coming here and trying to put Americans off of this land. Now, side note, the current administration is taking some Americans and putting them off this land. They're doing things. They say they're gathering up these dangerous people, and I kind of can't stand that. These criminals, I kind of cringe when I hear that, because the president has been convicted of a number of felonies, and so the fact that he would stand up and talk about who's bad and who's in a gang, when we have seen people who have done horrendous things get away, not only get away with things, but be elevated and be given good jobs and accolades. So when you see that, sometimes you kind of wonder, God, where are you? Where are you at? What you doing? I remember reading someplace where a survivor of the Holocaust, remember saying out loud that he would have to think about whether or not he was going to forgive God. So you have those moments. And I'm just saying that because some people are really struggling and wondering where God is in these particular times, because it's really hard. Well, I'm reading this book. I'm sure many to most of you have read it, called Texts of Terror. And it's by Phyllis Tribble. She's still alive. She's a scholar, biblical scholar, and she's talking about in this book some stories of things that happened to women. Um, Women were not valued back then. Women are not really valued that much now. There are people in the current administration who want to get rid of take away the rights of women to vote. And the budget bill that's they're trying to bring them through the House and the Senate now would kind of accomplish at least a good part of that. We work too hard, and our voices matter. Our voices matter. And so the fact that they're trying to do that reminds me, it should remind all of us that in terms of the society, women are not still considered really full citizens worthy of all of the rights a full American citizen should get. That's in addition to the black people and the brown people and the poor people and the disabled and the LGBTQIA, all of that. There are people in power who decided and who continue to try to decide who gets the rights and who gets pushed to the side. Anyway, we all know that there are people who go through horrendous experiences in their lives and they go to church looking for God, and a lot of times they get messages that kind of doesn't give them that message. They kind of wonder where God is, and they didn't hear a delivering God for their situation, the messages that are given. So I was reading this in part in Texts of Terror, and the woman who wrote, the person who wrote the foreword says that a scholar wrote this very personal account to her. It says, I grew up in a small rural community, and the church I attended and that confirmed me avoided discussions of abuse in general and violence against women and children in particular. They avoided those discussions. As a survivor of sexual abuse, the silence was isolating and created further fear and shame for me. With this history and a call to church ministry, I entered seminary in the 1980s as a budding feminist interested in learning about gender dynamics and the Bible. My male Bible professors took pains to biblically justify the ordination of women, for which I am grateful. However, when Texts of Terror came out, I eagerly read it to fill in the gaps in my education. Texts of Terror was eye opening because some of the narratives Tribble analyzed were new to me or often glossed over in my courses. I remember feeling relief that finally there were biblical women whose stories mirrored mine, but angry that God was complicit in the women's sexual violence and suffering in many cases. Why did God send Hagar back to an abusive relationship and not intervene when Tamar's half brother raped her or when Jephthah's daughter agreed to sacrifice herself for her father's stupidity? I was horrified reading about the violent rape and bodily mutilation of the unnamed woman in Judges 19. Where was the word of hope for the community of faith? I'm going to stop there. The text is called The Text of Terror, and it's by Phyllis Tribble. But it's an important book to read, and it's important to deal with the questions and the struggles that you have in times like this when maybe sometimes you can't find God. I don't think that it's particularly helpful to your own soul to pretend like everything is all right when it's not. And God is He's a big boy. God can take our questions and our anger and our pushing back and our confusion. God can take that. So I think it's really important for us to acknowledge where we are and the struggles we have and the questions we have, and try to get some type of rhythm going between us and our talking to God so that we can find the peace and the strength that we need to deal with times like this. I have said that as these tariffs come up and are going forward, it's going to be economically really difficult for all of us. It may result in a recession. That's what people are saying. And so we have to be prepared. We have to be prepared. So you need to start stocking up on your toilet paper and your water and all those things that you think you might need, because if a recession hits, how it all happens. People run to the grocery stores and try to buy stuff and the shelves are empty. So don't wait. Do it now. Watch the signs. And as you're doing this, if you're already struggling for a number of reasons and you're wondering where God is, remember that it's okay to ask God, where are you at? Where are you? God can take it. God can take it. So anyway, my name is Reverend Susan Smith. You have joined me for Thursday morning, a reading from my book, Rest for the Justice Seeking Soul. And I am really grateful for those of you who are purchasing it, even still, and having devotions even with your families. I really appreciate that. And I want to thank you. I have this book. There's only 90 meditations in them, but I do write a meditation every single Tuesday. I never miss. I never miss. And if you want to get a meditation, all you have to do is email me at crazyfaith2019@gmail.com. And if I get your request to be put on that distribution list, I will do it. I will do it. So then it means the week following your query or your ask of me, you will receive a meditation every single Tuesday. I invite you to share them. I invite you to those of you who are watching this morning to watch and to like and to share and subscribe. If you're watching it on YouTube, subscribe so that we can get the word out and continue to grow our family of listeners. But every morning, and I think that the one thing that you will find in my messages of of support is that I try to bring some history of African American people and other oppressed people into those meditations. I think it's really important for us to be able to see ourselves in the holy talk. I don't like that, but the so-called religious talk that's going on. We've got to be able to see ourselves and our situation. So again, that email is crazyfaith2019@gmail.com. And as soon as I get those emails, I put them on the list. So there's that. So this morning, I'm going to read you the meditation that I sent out this past Tuesday. I don't know, I've just been kind of wondering, thinking about the children. Where are the children? And so this meditation is called, How Are They Handling All the Stress? You know what I do? I look at pictures of those children in Gaza when their homes are all bombed out. They don't have their homes. Many of them don't have their families. Their lives have been torn apart because wealthy and greedy people who hunger for power more than they care about the lives and situations of human beings are at it. And when I recall how the president has said that Gaza would be a good place for lakefront property, I just cringe. And I think about those babies. I think about them, and I think about the many poor people in this country, the many poor children. We have such a high rate of childhood poverty. I think about that, and it really, really, really bugs me. And so this week I wrote this thing called And How Are the Children? And it reads, The Maasai, who live in southern Kenya and northern Tanzania, East Africa, greet each other with the phrase, And how are the children? The expected and common response is, The children are well. Known as the Kaserian Ngere, the greeting reveals the belief of the Maasai that unless the children are being taken care of, the well being of the entire society is at risk. It is the children in the world, those who will grow up to lead their respective countries, who are being most traumatized in these troubling times. Many of them are living in abject poverty. They are victims of war, being forced to live among the rubble of what used to be their city or neighborhood they loved. Many are so poor that they either have practically nothing to eat or they scrimmage for food among garbage heaps, and that is the truth. They are the ones who have been orphaned because of wars, having their childhood snatched from them because of the antics and practices of people in power. It is the children in this country who learn that being different is not acceptable. They see their parents being deported. Black and brown children, too many of whom grow up in abject poverty in this nation, which has been up to now the wealthiest nation in the world, have little to eat and who are often left alone to fend for themselves as their parents work 2 to 3 jobs trying to make enough money to feed them and keep them housed. How do children process the trauma, the death, and the suffering that they see? Trauma has a devastating effect on one's soul. It is often so extreme that one pushes it as deeply within them as possible because they do not want to think about it. The children who are traumatized by the practices and policies of government do not at first know how to bury their pain, but as they grow and the trauma they continue to see and experience causes their childhood innocence to incinerate as they learn to live with trauma as a constant companion. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. asked the question in his book, Where Do We Go From Here? Chaos or Community? He asked, Why is equality so assiduously avoided? Why does white America delude itself, and how does it rationalize the evil it retains? And I'm going to say that letting people be traumatized by in a situation where they have enough money to fix it, there's something inherently evil about that. So when I read that, it was the word retains that made me pause. White America has refused to let go of its racism and sexism and negative beliefs about so many it considers to be other. It is though they cannot exist without the bigotry feeding their souls. They cannot see the suffering of any of those whom they work against, but they especially cannot see and do not care about the children. When I was a child, I remember hearing the adults talk about busing, and I remember wondering why white people hated black people so much. I could not understand the pictures of children being bitten by police dogs and attacked by firemen hosing them down. I could not understand why the white people I saw on television or read about in the newspaper, yeah, I did read the newspaper when I was a kid, I was a nerd, but read about in the newspaper were doing what they were doing. And as I grew older and studied the history of race relations in this country, my puzzlement only increased. It seemed as though they hated for hatred's sake. And it seemed that they were unconcerned with what God said we were supposed to do, to love one's neighbor as oneself. They weren't doing that. And I wondered what God was doing or was going to do about it. I would imagine that many children in the present day wonder the same thing. It hurts to be rejected and hated just because of who you are. I remember when a friend of mine and I were walking home from school. A white woman was walking toward us, and as we got nearer to each other, the white woman went on the grass and did this humongous loop as far away from us as she could, like we had a disease or something. And she glared at us as she passed, and we just kind of stopped and looked at her, and then looked at each other, and we laughed out loud and shrugged and said something about her and continued on our way. But we were traumatized because we understood that another human being thought it fitting to let us know how unacceptable we were as fellow human beings and by walking as far away from us as she could. I wonder what the extent of the damage is to the souls of black, brown, and poor children who are traumatized on a daily basis because of their race, their gender, their ethnicity, or their geographic location. I wonder about the children in Gaza. I wonder about the children in all war torn countries. As much as I hate the attention given to the word woke, I understand how painful being woke is or can be to both the traumatized and the group who has done the traumatizing. We as Black people do not want to revisit our history because the trauma has been too great. We have relatives who have lost their lives or who have put their lives at risk when they have fought against the trauma caused by the violence and deprivation of rights and dignity doled out by the privileged. Those who have participated in oppressing others do not want to see or be reminded of what their ancestors have done in the past, and they do not want to look at themselves and look themselves in the eye to answer for what they are doing in the present. The children are not well. Neither the oppressed nor those who participate in oppressive behavior or who are being schooled on how to do it. We are living in a space and a time when making America great means destroying the policies that helped Black and brown children experience some relief from the constant battering of racism and sexism, and it hurts. But if it hurts the adults who are bemoaning the loss of the progress that has been made to make the lives of all Black people more palatable than it had been before the 60s, think about the children, about the babies, about the effect all of this is having on them. Our work must include working and walking with the children. Our children, whose bright eyes are dimmed as they see the evidence of economic, racial, and gender oppression all around them, need us. To each other, we must say, and how are the children? And if the answer is anything other than the children are well, we know we have much specific work to do with them. For they will take over as we who are older make our transition from this earth. We will have to teach them to cope and to continue to hope and press for the dignity that this racist and sexist world does not want to give. Amen and amen. So that is it for this Thursday morning. I'm really glad again that all of you who are here, and I hope that you will share with your friends and family that we are on every single Thursday, except when I'm out of town. I never miss Tuesdays, but I sometimes miss Thursdays because, and y'all have heard me talk about how I sometimes just can't get the lighting right in those hotel rooms. But there are copies or videos of these Tuesday meditations or Thursday meditations on our YouTube page. So you're welcome to go and look at them. And I encourage you and really ask you to like and subscribe and tell people so that we can expand our family. I hope that everybody has a good day. I hope that you will think about this question: how are the children? As you look and you see the children, maybe some of them may be acting out, maybe some of them may be looking sad. Ask, and how are the children? And then ask God how you as an individual, or you as a faith community, or you as an organization can help the children. Because when we leave this world, they're the ones who will be in charge. Their trauma needs to be recognized, addressed, and treated. And it's us who can do it. Y'all have a really good Thursday. I'll see you next week. Take good care.